Hello everybody and welcome to the Showcast, a series of candid conversations from film festivals and markets everywhere, presented by The Film Verdict and hosted by yours truly, Matt Micucci. I am thrilled to kick off this year's coverage of the Karlovy Vary International Film Festival in the Czech Republic with a bang. Today, I have a special treat for you as I sit down with none other than Karel Och, the artistic director of the esteemed festival. The Karlovy Vary International Film Festival, of course, holds a special place in the hearts of film enthusiasts worldwide and film professionals worldwide. And we'll delve into its rich history and significance. As we explore the 57th edition of this iconic event, we'll also uncover the exciting features and highlights that were part of its program this year. But our conversation with Karel Och doesn't stop there. We'll also take a fascinating journey into the birth of his own cinephilia, discovering the sparks that ignited his passion for the silver screen. Additionally, we'll explore the enduring connection Karel has forged with the festival, lovingly known as KVIFF by its devotees. So fire up an Audiotini and listen to the audio waves as they fly through the air, straight from the heart of the Karlovy Vary International Film Festival. This is the Showcast. Karel, it's a great pleasure to have you on the Showcast. What a treat.
Thank you for having me.
Very busy, right in the midst of the festival. How's it going so far, first of all? Very brief comment to kind of start off.
Oh, it's super exciting and exhausting at the same time because we get to sleep 3-4 hours, but then we get such kicks out of all these meetings with wonderful filmmakers. It's just incredibly amazing to finally meet people who are behind the films that with which we spent 2 months, 6 months, a year trying to prepare the best possible presentation, and now we're welcoming the filmmakers and inevitably you have to connect, because if they come with the fact knowing that you love their movies, I mean, it's what a beginning of a relationship. So we get 3-4 times a day such emotion, and it's a wave, and it's a beautiful wave, and we don't look forward to the end.
Yeah, it's one of my many times coming to this festival, and the atmosphere is always great. But this is one of actually the first podcasts that I'm recording in Karlovy Vary for The Film Verdict. And part of the thing that I want to do with these podcasts is not just talk about the industry stuff, which is all really interesting, and also what's happening in the now. I also want to find out about the places where I am and how cinema connects with these places. So this is a very simple question, but of course, Karlovy Vary is in the Czech Republic, which is a country that I love. But is the Czech Republic a cinephile country, in your opinion?
Judging from what I see around me every year in July, but also other times of the year when there's other festivals which are cinephilia driven in the Czech Republic, I would say yes. I would say Czech Republic is a country with a rich cinematic tradition, and not just filmmakers wise, but also film critiques wise. Because, for instance, in the 1960s, unfortunately, unlike nowadays, the film critique and the filmmaking was very much connected. And that combination was very attractive for the audience, because you get a film and then you get understanding voice, which explains you a lot, and it makes it more attractive for you. So we have cinephiles of all age. My parents come to the festival every year and they watch as many movies as they can. My older son, who's 15 now, he came this year for the second time. He watched 5 movies in 2 days. We're very fortunate to have in Karlovy Vary, which I consider a sample of the Czech cinephilia when it comes to different generations, representation of all of them.
Yeah, very varied and wide-ranging. But from what you said, then I take it that you were a cinephile from an early age, you yourself.
I come from a small town, and there is still a local cinema which has a balcony and Dolby sound, which is quite a lot for a town of 6,000 inhabitants. At some point, I remember some movies that I fell in love with there, like A Clash of Titans and Superman by John Carpenter, etc. All these memories from the childhood. At some point, I got friendly with the elderly couple who was running the cinema, and I was picking up the tickets, changing the light bulbs, and at some point even collaborating on the dramaturgy of the cinema. And this is, I think, how my cinephilia was fostered. And I was reading all the newspapers. I'm talking still 1980s, so it was before the fall of communism. So the possibilities to approach art house cinema were limited, but it all kind of exploded in early 90s when least through the Czech television or Czechoslovak television, we could see all the Bergmans and Truffauts and Buñuels, and I was recording feverishly on VHS tapes all these films that I still have them. I will never throw them out, but and it all resulted in going to Prague and studying cinema.
Oh, well, it sounds amazing because you had the Cinema Paradiso side on the one hand and then also the VHS Cinephilia, which I was very much a part of. I also recorded films on late night television on VHS. What times they were, you know. But then, of course, I believe that you also went on to study film theory and history. So here's a question at the Child's University, actually. Here's a question. Who were some of the film theorists that rocked your world?
Well, I have to mention one name, Jiří Cízlar. He was my professor, and he was a very particular person. I say was because unfortunately he passed away when he was way too young. He was a very charismatic guy who ended up studying cinema, because of some coincidence. He was more into literature. So he kind of brought into the film studies the disciplinary gaze. So he was very much into comparatism, into writing about cinema as a literature. He was lifelong lover of Luchino Visconti. So he got granted a book which allowed him to go to Sicily and to travel north and stopping in each location where Luchino Visconti shot the films, starting with Aci Trezza, going through Siena for Le Vaghe Stelle d'Orosa, all the places to Venice because of Senso. And he met the people connected. He wrote a book. I mean, that was an infection of cinephilia, but with an extra layer of not being secluded, not being isolated in a kind of a closed colony of just cinema.
Yeah. Going beyond the grand theories of Christian Metz, cinema as a language, which is all very interesting, but then also it secludes, like you said, cinema into a box. We want to avoid that. Then you and Karlovy Vary have a long-standing history, because we should say the festival, of course, is historic. It's iconic to a certain extent, but not to a lot. And it's the 57th edition this year. But it's also, like I said, have a long-standing rapport with the festival itself. How did it begin and how has it developed over the years?
It brings me back to spring 2001 when I studied in Paris, and I got an email from a colleague of mine from the school who already then worked as a programmer in Karlovy Vary, and she offered me a job, or she communicated the offer from Mrs. Auralova, my former boss, to become a jury secretary. So I came to Karlovy Vary. Probably I'm the only one from the staff who never been to Karlovy Vary before as a guest, because always at the beginning of summer holidays, I would disappear somewhere traveling in the world. And then this offer comes and I get a little nervous because I'm supposed to take care of Jafar Panahi, Krzysztof Zanussi, and you name it. I mean, these personalities, and I don't even know where the cinemas are. But then, of course, you have to jump and you swim, and you learn by doing it. And it was marvelous because I just mentioned a few personalities with whom you spend 10 days, and it's a school, it's a lesson, it's a beautiful connection. As soon as the festival was over, I got an offer from Mrs. Auralova to join the programming team starting January 2002, and then 3 years came when I was working from January to July, and I would spend the rest of the year in Tuscany because I was together with a woman from Firenze. So we would have this life when you come back to the office in January, all suntan, relaxed from the harvesting wine and whatnot. And then, of course, 2004 came the offer to work full time, and slowly approaching 2010, which was crucial because the mentioned Mrs. Auralova decided to give her position or pass her position on to me. She picked me as her successor. I moved into her office. We faced each other literally for next 8-9 years, talking about everything, life, politics, movies. I mean, she was cracking jokes one after another. She was already 78 years old back then. And she was telling me, like, I remember Fontana di Trevi before Fellini made La Dolce Vita. It was such a calm place. I mean, all this stuff, life connects to cinema, which for me is crucial. I mean, the way I see the world is I see the world through films, and I watch the films through the world. I mean, it's closely connected.
I've been listening to you intently, and what I pick up from you mentioning, of course, your two mentors that you mentioned, your lecture, and then when you came over to Karlovy Vary, it really does make me reflect upon the importance of mentors in the world and how important they've been. So obviously you're very grateful to these people.
I am not just, the role of a mentor is the profession or the knowledge that you can outsource or you can take, but it's also the human qualities, and which are more and more valuable nowadays because, these people are like lighthouses. Now they are like on isolated islands, but they have such a charisma and such light, and just to be around them, it's so incredibly inspiring. And what can I say? I mean, that's probably the person that influenced my life the most after my parents.
Hey, so I've completely failed to consider that some of the people listening to this podcast may not be as familiar as we are with the Karlovy Vary International Film Festival, because I would love for this podcast to be heard by people who are just starting out in the film industry. Maybe they're just new film students, but I think we should pay tribute also to the history of this amazing festival by maybe talking a little bit about it, because I actually watched a documentary about it, which was produced not so long ago. But yeah, I think we should talk about it. So would you mind doing us the honor?
It is a very particular beast of a festival. We like to say it's an old young festival. It was founded the same year as Cannes or Locarno, 1946. Obviously, 2 years later, the communists took over the power in the country. And even though the festival continued, you could not really talk about the complete freedom of speech and freedom of programming. One fun fact is that a guy in my position, the programming director, was at the same time the head of the jury, just to make sure that all the decisions were politically correct. There is a very beautiful trivia connected to the early days of Karlovy Vary and this particular edition of the festival. In 1948, a young Slovak student named Eduard Gerečner came to Karlovy Vary. He wasn't sure whether he would become a writer or a filmmaker. He watched a Mexican movie called Puerto Escondido, and that made him decide it's cinema. He became quite an important filmmaker in the 60s, made some iconic films. Then he strongly opposed the invasion of the Soviet troops, and he was cancelled, basically. He could no longer film in the 70s and 80s. He's still alive. There's a documentary made on him, which is world premiering actually in 2 hours, and he's here. So it's a comeback to Karlovy Vary after 75 years. He's 91 years old, and we spoke yesterday about his first visit when he was 17. He came once in 1964 with a debut, but I mean, this is what this festival is about. Like most bizarre and most amazing connection of the past and the present.
Yes, unbelievable. It's amazing. And I think we should also mention the Hotel Thermal, which we're in, because that is like where everything happens, but it's also a building with a history in itself.
It's a wild icon. If you watch the building from above, you notice it has a shape of the movie camera on purpose. Yeah. Because the grand hall is round and small hall is round, so it's like two bobbins of the camera, and with the central part being the hotel. It was built on purpose for the festival in 1976. The architects, which was a famous couple, the Machonins, they were icons of the brutalism. They have a few buildings in Prague. They traveled Europe to study the technical conditions of a cinema. And you can see in the Grand Hall, which is just a perfect cinema, that despite the fact it has 1,200 seats, you always feel intimate from any seat where you are because of the elevation and the angles and the position of everything. It's a huge screen, but you feel this intimate contact. And the idea, because people who came to Karlovy Vary, they know there is a swimming pool above the thermal hotel, which is connected with the corridor and a small elevator. The idea back then was to watch a film in the Grand Hall and to go without leaving the building to reach the swimming pool and to discuss the film.
Yes, which is a great place to discuss films. Excellent. I mean, having covered all of those grounds, we should get to the present times, because with the 57th edition returns another inspired program of wide-ranging cinema, excellent thematic sections, and also new competitions. I haven't been here, unfortunately, since the pandemic, so it's been a tough time, but there have been some changes, major changes to the main, let's say, quote-unquote program, right?
Yeah, the official selection, which is how we call the main program, is basically in a completely different shape now, because last year we decided that the mission called the East of the West competition is accomplished. Back in the 90s, we created this second competition in order to support the films and filmmakers coming from our territory, meaning Central Eastern Europe, ex-Soviet Union countries, the Balkans, etc., because it was time to come back from the isolation behind the Iron Curtain. And throughout all these years, we supported a lot of filmmakers from Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, you name it. And we felt that those filmmakers are already out there and they would love to compete on an international level. We decided to cancel the geo-blocking, so-called, of the East of the West and to create a competition which, if I should simplify it, somehow resembles Berlinale's Encounters, because, I mean, it's a typical second competition focused on young and up-and-coming filmmakers or on the filmmakers who are already established, but they feel the need to kind of change direction, to try something new aesthetically or thematically. That happened for the first time last year. It's called Proxima now, and I believe we succeeded to put together a selection this year, which is worth checking.
Yeah. And speaking of the selection, of course, Karlovy Vary is a major date for the film industry, filmmakers and film aficionados. But is there a challenge in kind of maintaining a good standard of program when you're, especially in light of other major events in Europe, like Venice, Berlin, Cannes?
We can call it in 5 different ways. One of them, as you just mentioned, a challenge to keep a certain standard. But it all goes down to trying to do a job as good as you can. I think it was Elio Petri who said, la più grande resistenza è il lavoro fatto bene, no? I mean, the biggest sign of resistance or of I don't know, you help me, of
job well done.
It's job well done. So this is what we learned from the mentors. And if the job is a hobby at the same time, you want to honor your hobby by giving it the best, and you have a certain taste and you want to keep the taste. Of course, you're monitoring the situation around you, but we always followed our path and we tried to program and get the best films. And at the end of the day, if we succeed, that means that we somehow succeeded to keep the standard.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, aside from what's happening now, there's also retrospectives and thematic sections. One of them that I wanted to highlight was the Iranian one that actually highlights films from the past 5 years, I believe. For example, taking that section into consideration, why is now a good time for a section like this?
I have to pay tribute to Lorenzo Esposito, who is an Italian programmer. He works for Berlinale, that is a daily job, but he has been for a while our Italian correspondent, but also a great friend and member of Enrico Ghezzi's famous team, speaking of iconic television movies in Fuori Orario. He came up with the idea because he's closely following, obviously, the Iranian cinema, that he felt that it's time to put a light on certain, someone can call it underground cinema in Iran, because there were more than a few examples of something extraordinary in the terms of how one can succeed to make a film in such difficult conditions, being more or less cryptic about the reality, and obviously knowing or assuming that once the film screens somewhere, it might be completely difficult to even accompany the film, or counting on rather problematic consequences of that screening or of an appearance. I'm very happy that many of the filmmakers of the 9 films that we included in the retrospectives are here or will be coming. Obviously, the political aspect of this retrospective is clear, but it was not our first intention. Our first intention was, I would say, poetic or artistic or aesthetic, really focusing on the films as a work of art. But of course, inevitably, because of them coming from where they come from, they are inevitably politic.
Introducing the political aspect, of course, I cannot ignore, as we all can't, the fact that the war in Ukraine has had an impact on everybody in Europe, especially, and including in the cultural discourse. How has it impacted Karlovy Vary, both in a practical and theoretical way?
I mean, in a mental way is that we are obviously heartbroken on a daily basis, following all the news and not seeing the end of it. There is a lot of communication between my team and filmmakers in Ukraine. We have 2 Ukrainian films in the program, some of them made by friends of ours who had previously films in Karlovy Vary. I mean, we barely received any Russian film from consideration, and I mean Russian independent films, not being supported by state money, but maybe minority co-productions from Russia who are already somewhere else, living abroad. None of the films made it into a program. It's sad. I don't know. We try to use any opportunity to not allow that this conflict goes forgotten, because that's what happens when people after a while get tired, which is a stupid word connected to the war, but the news might get tiring, and people have to go on with their lives. So any type of special occasion is good to bring back the attention. And there is one exciting thing which we did announce, and part of it we are announcing now, is that we included last minute this musical documentary called Scream of My Blood, a Gogol Bordello story, portrait of the famous gypsy punk band from New York, with the frontman Eugene Hoods, who is originally Ukrainian, but an immigrant to New York, and of course, traveling Ukraine lately to support Ukrainian people with music. And he's coming today to Karlovy Vary with his guitar, by the way. So we can expect a strong political moment connected to art, or supported, fostered by art, which is something that we always welcome.
Yeah. Like Nina Simone said, art should reflect the times. But then again, so should film festivals or other institutions like that, right? Okay, so moving on from that, I want to talk about the industry, because I know that we have a limited time anyways, but I cannot refrain from doing that, because it's a very important event for the industry as well, that travels from different parts of the world. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Of course. If we mention the word industry at KVIFF, or Eastern Promises, which is the name of the platform, I have to add the name of Hugo Rosak, our colleague who runs the industry office. And with his arrival, things have changed significantly. He brought the industry to a richly and highly European level, introduced a few new elements. Together with the traditional works in progress, we have other events connected to filmmaking, or making a film, or different stages of filmmaking, trying to really support as many young filmmakers as possible, bringing over the distributors, the script doctors, people from all kinds of different areas that I met many of them yesterday at the industry party, some of them who come for the first time and are surprised how big the whole thing is. It has gotten really big, and we just try to discuss with Hugo always the fact that certain limits are always good, because we want the industry people to go see movies in the cinema. And this is how let's say the industry program is designed, that it's not overwhelming. It's very strong and condensed, but not overwhelming.
Yeah. It's fantastic. And also they get to come to a beautiful place like Karlovy Vary, which should emphasize it's a beautiful place to be in for a couple of days. Final question. I'm going to get silly a little bit, but I noticed that you're also a big fan of tattoos. Can you tell us about one special tattoo that's on your body and that has a special significance to you?
I have my grandfather. That's one of my first tattoos. He used to have pigeons, so it's based on a photo where he has a pigeon on his head, on his cupola head, and it's particular because it only respects the shapes of the body. It doesn't have a face, but I know the face, so it's kind of like how to keep it intimate, but at the same time to honor him, and the fact that I miss him, I can see him every day in my life.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much, Karel. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
And that's a wrap for this captivating episode of the Showcast, which also introduces a podcast coverage of the Karlovy Vary International Film Festival that you can look forward to over the coming weeks, as we will unveil more episodes featuring conversations with guests of all kinds, from filmmakers to actors to curators and more, linked to the 57th edition of this prestigious annual event. Remember that the Karlovy Vary International Film Festival is not just a celebration of films, but a testament to the boundless creativity, cultural diversity, and shared love for storytelling that unites us all as passionate cinephiles. And in the upcoming episodes of the Showcast, we will continue to bring you exclusive interviews and behind-the-scenes glimpses into its world. Thank you for joining me. Until the next time, this is Matt Micucci signing off from The Film Verdict. See you soon.